little lunch and learn with Capiche and LeanIX. Now, the reason why I say Capiche is because we are going through a little bit of a rebrand at the moment at Citadel. So Citadel is a large company. We've got many different divisions. The division that we work in, traditionally called Enterprise Solutions, which is the division that has the partnership with LeanIX. It's just going through a bit of a reorg and a bit of a rebranding, and we're taking on the name Capiche, which is one of our other products that we also sell. From now on, you'll see Capiche EA or Capiche Enterprise Architecture. It's the same Citadel team, just slightly different branding there. So I wanted to call that out. Also as well, LeanIX is now an SAP endorsed app. So there was a lot of media going around recently on that one. So essentially now that SAP customers have much easier access into the LeanIX ecosystem and vice versa. So anyone using SAP, feel free to reach out to your rep or to myself to have a bit of a chat around that further. That's all good. All right, I'm going to kick on to a couple of slides just to give you a little bit of context. We've got some awesome customers that you'll recognize here. We've been growing very rapidly over the past sort of 18 months or so, with lots of people adopting sort of LeanIX as a new way of doing things, becoming faster, smarter, more cost effective. And in terms of where we sit, the Citadel Group, which I probably should have named Capiche as of the new sort of rebranding, but we sort of cover off the APAC part of the world. So we're the reseller for this area of the world, and LeanIX is a German company. They've also got a large presence over in North America. In terms of data, it's all hosted in Australia for the APAC region, so hosted out of Microsoft Azure in Sydney. So that's a big tick for obviously a lot of government customers out there, and most people these days, really. What we're going to look at today is the EA suite. So there's a couple of other periphery products which I won't go into today, just in the interest of time. But we've got application portfolio management, we've got our risk module, and then we've got our business transformation suite as well. So I'll touch on all three of those, and I'll call out when I'm going to each different module. Obviously, they're all sort of priced differently, so I want to make sure that you guys are aware of the functionality of each one. The product itself is ISO 27001 certified, SOC 2 certified, single sign-on available, sitting in secure data center. So that's all good. In terms of out-of-the-box integrations, we've got, as you can see here, this middle box is available with the EA suite. So we can do some really cool things with the Confluence integration, like pushing reports into Confluence and sucking information out of ServiceNow, and bringing your business processes through from Signavio and things like that. So happy to have a chat with anyone if they wanted to reach out afterwards about that sort of stuff. Just touching on the sort of below the tip of the iceberg, if you will, sort of the capability within each of these modules. APM is all about looking at your current state, understanding what you currently have, and getting mainly visibility, right? That's the aim of the game, is to have an understanding and have visibility across your IT landscape, so that your stakeholders can make better decisions, better data-driven decisions. So application portfolio management is all about business capability modeling, understanding how applications are supporting those capabilities, what is the technology that's supporting those applications, how information is being shared across our portfolio. TRM is all about enabling that. So basically making your life easier, providing an interface or an integration with the ServiceNow CMDB, and also providing you with a LeanIX Lifecycle Catalog for all of your IT components, which I'll show you live as well. And the business transformation module is all about delivering change to your architecture. How are we understanding what the next 3 to 5 years is going to look like? We're able to do some scenario modeling. So if we implement projects A, B, and D, this is what our architecture will look like. It's also a crucial module as part of the S4 transformation, which I know a lot of customers are going through at the moment, or starting to think about at least. The last slide from me before we get stuck into the tool set is the data model. So this loosely follows the TOGAF principles, but if we look at it from a sort of a bottom-up approach, essentially we've got our technology and how that's categorized through our providers, our tech stack, the tech category. That follows the industry standard TBM framework. Our IT components are all about databases, hardware, software, services, and that's supporting our applications. which is in turn supporting our business, right? So with LeanIX, we're able to understand sort of how our business processes are supporting our applications, which user groups are using which applications, and we can all roll up the risk from the bottom level and then understand at a capability level where there might be areas of concern across the portfolio. Top level here is all about change. So understanding what are our sort of high level business objectives, what's our corporate strategy, and then what are the projects, the initiatives that we have ongoing that are going to deliver on that strategy. So this is all how it all hangs together. These are called fact sheet types, and I'm going to jump into the tool set now and show that. So what we can see here is we've got our inventory, and I'm going to spend probably only maybe 10 minutes on the inventory. I think I want to be quite quick because I want to get to the value of the tool set, which is in the reporting capabilities essentially. So we've got our fact sheet structure down the side, and we've got an application fact sheet here. So I'm going to start with an application. Application is centric to LeanIX. There's a really cool feature here, which I think is maybe underutilized or not appreciated as much as I think it should be. But you start typing a description, and it'll give you recommended business capabilities that you can map that application to, which I think is really neat when trying to understand how your environment all hangs together. Now, if you don't have a business capability model, there's some awesome free resources on the LeanIX website. There's industry-specific capability models as well. So you can download those into Excel, and then you could load those into a LeanIX trial workspace, for example, quite easily. We've got our lifecycle information for this application, and we've got our Relations Explorer. Now, the Relations Explorer is very powerful. So instead of having to get all this different information, spreadsheets and Visio diagrams and all the rest of it across your portfolio, if we want to do a bit of impact analysis and some quick ad hoc sort of analysis on the go, we can come to the Relations Explorer and we can look at sort of the fact that account management has got a successor. There's 3 different projects that are supporting this particular application. We can see those there. We can see it's supporting the recruiting capability. We can see that the USA user group is using this system. We have employee data. There's also an interface, so we can see that account management and HR admin, those 2 applications, they are speaking to each other. And if we went into the interface fact sheet, we would be able to know a little bit more about that. Is it asynchronous? What is the information that's being shared? Those types of questions we can answer. We can also see that we've got 4 pieces of technology that are supporting this particular system. So we've got some Dell hardware, some hosting, some Oracle software, and some middleware. And we can see that this is in phase out. This is end of life. So there's sort of already was a bit of risk there that we need to address. But what we can start to do is we can actually start to go, okay, well, I want to know what else has employee data. And we can start to say, all right, well, we've got 20 other systems that have employee data, right? And then they say, I might be interested in payroll Europe. So I can have a look at payroll Europe and so on and so forth, right? So you can very easily understand how it all hangs together with the sort of a few clicks. Obviously, you need to have the data in there to be able to do that. And a system is only as good as the information that it's being maintained with. So the easiest way to get started is doing things in small increments. We don't want you to be daunted and to think that you've got to boil the ocean, for want of a better term, and try and get everything in there at once. Getting incremental pieces of value and showing that back to the business is going to be far more valuable than trying to get everything 100% before rolling this out. We saw the Relations Explorer. These are the relationships. So we can see the successor, the projects, the capabilities, the user groups, the data objects. We all saw that. This is where the relationship is managed and maintained. We've got our time classification as an attribute here. So we can look at what is our intent to this particular system. This is all configurable. So whatever eliminate means to your organization, you can configure that. Business criticality, functional fit. Now, these are things that you might get in there via, let's say, a survey. So you might send out a survey to your subject matter experts. They can then update that information in their email without actually having to navigate through to LeanIX. That will then update the repository automatically. we're going to go into an IT component fact sheet now. So we're looking at an application. I'm about to jump into an IT component, and we're looking at an Oracle database. So you might have this information in your environment. You might have the name, the release date, the life cycle, all that sort of stuff. From my experience, most customers don't, but if you do that, that's awesome. The best way to maintain and manage this information is with the LeanIX Lifecycle Catalog, right? And what I'm about to show you is part of the TRM module, right? So just to make sure that everyone's aware that what you're about to see is part of TRM. So we can look at this. Anything sort of on an Oracle or sort of maybe Dell or whatever it is, anything you can possibly imagine is in this particular catalog. We can go and find whatever we're looking for, and we've got our name, our description, our version details, the website. It actually creates the provider fact sheet for you. It'll create the tech category for you as well. That's based off the TBM industry standard. You've also got your lifecycle in there as well. And this is all fully managed by LeanIX. So if they extend the life cycle of this particular Power Edge or whatever it is, might be something like this, whatever it is, if they extend that life cycle, then that is then reflected in your environment. The really cool thing about this part of the tool set is that it's going to save you a lot of time. And I think the return on investment is very, very fast. Having someone manage this full time in an organization is a costly exercise. Also, if there's something here you can't find, you just report the missing data, and the SLA is they'll update it within 7 days for you. I think anything you can possibly imagine is in this catalog. All right, I'm going to fly through the top tabs pretty quickly because I want to get into the reports. But we've got subscribers, people who are interested in the information. The responsible people are responsible for the quality seal. The quality seal could be broken when something's changed, or it could be broken every 3 months or 6 months, for example, as part of your architectural governance that you're setting up. We've got a resources tab, so you might link back to the contract, for example, or link back to a Visio diagram that explains the system in a bit more detail. Now, the transformations tab, this is part of the BTM module, right? So what I'm about to show you is part of BTM. And essentially what we're doing here is we're delivering change to this particular application through a project, right? So what I can do is I can see that the replace account management with account management cloud application, project is going to have the following impacts, right? So we're going to create a new application. We're going to introduce a new user groups. We're going to create a relationship of it's going to be the successor of account management. We're going to set a life cycle. We're going to create those relationships. We're going to set a business criticality. We're going to set a functional fit. We're going to remove a tag. We're going to do all of that on the project. That is how that project will affect that application. When that's all complete in real life, we can hit execute, and then that will then change our architecture for us based on those impacts. The other neat thing as well, which I'll get to in a moment, is on the reports you can select a project and say, all right, I want to see if I was going to do that, this would be the change, right? So you don't actually have to execute it to see that change. You can do those scenario plans. Metrics and surveys I won't touch on today in the interest of time, but we've got our change log there as well, so we can see how things has changed over time. Right, so I'm going to dive into the reports because I think that's where the value is, and that's how. But it's very important to get a bit of a baseline and understand how information is maintained. So what we can do here, and this is my favorite report because it can be sliced and diced in so many different ways to answer so many different business questions, right? So at the moment, we've got our applications grouped by our capabilities, and we've got our lifecycle view turned on as well. So I can start to use the time slider at the top, and I might say, okay, well, I want to look at maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, and we can start to see how things have changed or how things will change into the future. We can also say, I want to see 2 points in time. So let's have a look at what has just the things that have changed. So get rid of some of the clutter. And we can see that within that 2-year period, this is going to be the change to our portfolio based on the lifecycle information that we've got against those applications. What we can start to do is we can start to understand where there might be some risk in our portfolio as well. So as you saw before, we've got an Oracle database that it's got an end of life, and we can sort of see that it's supporting two different applications, right? We've got account management and bonus card use watch. What we're doing here is we're bringing all that to the surface in a heat map. So everything that's red means that that application is sitting on some old technology, just like that Oracle database that we saw before. So what we can do is, if we're looking to do an application rationalization exercise, so we want to understand where there is potential to streamline and save money and be uh, a better organization, what we can do is we can turn on a couple of more properties, right? So we've got our technical fit and our functional fit at the moment also being viewed here. And we probably want to start with our applications that mean most to the business. So start where the pain is hurting the most. So looking at our mission critical systems, we can all of a sudden understand that, for example, HP Service Desk, it's got a really poor functional fit. It's got a poor technical fit. It's sitting on old technology. It's a mission critical system. You know, there's probably something in the market that's probably cheaper and much more fit for purpose for our organization. Let's get a project in place to change that out, right? What we can also then do is, which I think is really cool, is being able to then go, all right, we've identified that. Let's overlay some cost. So now we can start to see that's actually costing the business $320,000 a year, right? So that's a really good way of quickly understanding where there might be some saving opportunities in the portfolio. What I'm going to do now is, instead of grouping via capability, we can actually start to group those applications via, let's say, user groups. So now what I'm doing is I'm actually grouping each. Now I can see which applications are being used by which user groups across the portfolio. Instead of a cost view, I might be interested in looking at, maybe, for example, where my application's being hosted, right? So now we can start to see where applications are being hosted and who are the users that are using those. Now, user groups don't have to be geographical. That's just how this demo data has been mapped, right? So sometimes it might be with like through the org chart, for example. What I'm going to go to next is the time classification. So this is really neat. So we saw at the very start that the time classification is an attribute on the fact sheet, and we can start to group our applications via our intent of those applications, right? So I'm going to turn off that mission critical filter because I want to see everything. So what we can see here is that we've got the invest intent, and we've got a whole bunch of stuff that's on premise that we've decided to invest in. Like, is that really in line with our cloud first strategy as an organization? You know, probably not, right? Again, we can turn that cost view back on and understand that we are actually tolerating quite a lot of expensive systems in our portfolio. You know, there might be some opportunity here for these Salesforce Light and Payroll Germany to save some money there. So the application landscape, very powerful. I could keep going on that one, but there's probably 3 or 4 other reports that I want to get to as well. So I'm going to leave that one there. I am going to touch on the IT component landscape, though, because I think that is quite important, being able to understand where your technologies are end of life and how they're being grouped. But in particular, understanding the resource classification. So what are my approved technologies that I have, right? So if I'm a solution architect, I want to know that I'm building out a new solution on approved databases, approved, approved systems, approved computers, mainframes, that type of thing. We can actually hone in on a particular application and understand, and unfortunately the data is not amazing for this particular view, but you can sort of see where I'm going here, that the database being used for BYOD directory is actually conditional. So we wouldn't want to make sure that all the justification document has been completed for that. The matrix report is really good as well. So being able to now, we're bringing in another dimension. So we had our application landscape, which was awesome, but now we're looking at sort of bringing in those user groups as well. And in my discussions with sort of architects and people of that sort of level and CIOs and all that sort of stuff over the past couple of years, the feedback is that people usually sort of have a lot of this info in disparate systems, right? So SharePoint and Excel and Confluence and people's brains, but very, very rarely do you see it all on one page. So what we can start to do is we can actually start to look at things like our data classification, right? So I can now see where confidential and restricted information is being shared across which capabilities and which user groups. But we can go a step further actually. So we can actually start to look at the data, the data objects. So now we can actually see what are those individual information assets that are within that system. What is the classification? What capabilities it's supporting, and which user groups using it? So, we're answering like 7 questions in just in one view, right? And we can start to you can still just drill down onto like, I don't know, different business criticalities, for example, as well. So you've got all the other filters at your disposal. Another one that you might want to look at is that same risk view that we viewed before, but instead of drilling down on those data objects, we might drill down on the IT components. So now we can actually see what are the systems that are making up that particular risk there. I want to have a look at some road mapping, and then I'm going to dive into the circle map, look at some diagramming, and then we'll finish up and have sort of 5 minutes for questions. So road mapping, looking at sort of technology roadmaps. So what we can start to look at here is sorting by the end date. The data is a little bit old, so all this stuff is already end of life, but we can start to see where our technology is in its life cycle and what's coming up for a phase out. What do we need to do? And the cool thing here as well is we can actually drill down to the application level, right? So collapse all that, and now I can start to see that, okay, this HP Blade server is going end of life in 24, but it's supporting an application that has no intent of being retired. Right, so we need to make sure that when that actually does happen, that application is being properly supported by new technology. The project roadmap is really cool. So being able to understand what are the projects that we have ongoing at the moment. Again, we can drill down into, for example, the business capabilities. So now we can see what are the projects and what capabilities those projects are supporting very, very easily. There's some cool cost reports, which I'll just very briefly touch on, understanding whether cost per provider, for example, or even cost per capability. So looking at sort of where the most expensive capabilities are. But a really good one that I wanted to spend a bit more time on was the circle map. So what we've got here is we've got the ability to understand how information is being shared across the portfolio, right? So we've got a HR admin. We can see that there's a fair bit going on there. We can see that we've got a number of consumed interfaces, we've got a number of provided interfaces as well. And we can start to filter on that as well. So I might only want to look at things that are sharing information through an ESB, for example, an ESB interface, right? So now we can hone in on that. Or for example, we could only filter down on things that have contract data, right? So now we can go and look at that. What I want to do though is I want to dive into that a little bit further and understand how that all hangs together in a little bit more detail. So I'm going through to the data flow diagram. Where are we? All right, here we go. So now I'm going to turn on, for example, a business criticality view, so we can still see where there's important systems in our portfolio, and I can also start to play around with these filters and turn on information, things like the data objects, right? So now I know that account management is sharing information via an ESB, it's sharing customer data to HR admin, right? So that's a great starting place. We can start to navigate our way through our portfolio. This is all data driven. So this is all based off the information that's already in the inventory. And we can start to do things like drill down. We can drill down into like the data object within account management, for example. We might also care about the business capability in JobWatch, for example, right? So we can start to get a really good picture of our entire portfolio, just starting from one place. And we've got all of the different views, we've got the same sort of cost views that we saw before, the same views around where things are being hosted, all that sort of stuff we can still overlay on these particular reports, which ends up being super powerful. We can then save this report right? Save as, and then we could share this through potentially a HTML embedded code. So we could pop this into a SharePoint page very, very easily, which would then remain dynamic, right? People would still be able to sort of, play around with the report and understand how it all hangs together still, right? Another way that we could do that would be to push that through to Confluence. So there's a direct integration with Confluence and LeanIX. You can literally just download the Confluence, so the LeanIX widget on the Confluence store, and then turn that integration on in like 10 minutes, and then have these reports, shared through to your solution architecture documents or your justification documents, things like that, in Confluence very, very easily. Um, Now, before I jump into the diagramming, because I know that that's a topic that I wanted to cover as well, I did just have a mind blank, and I forgot to show you one thing back on the landscape. So I'm just going to touch on that quickly, go back into the diagramming, and then we'll keep going. But I just wanted to show you, as I said, in terms of showing how you can do scenario modeling, delivering change through your portfolio. Initially, we saw that project with all of those. What am I trying to say? All those transformations on them. For example, we can actually select a project. So we can select a particular project, we can use that project, and then we can understand that, okay, in those 2 points in time, this project is gonna make these changes to our architecture, and we can actually hone in on the fact sheets that have changed, right? So we can see that if we were to implement this particular project, these are the changes that are going to happen to our portfolio, and you can select multiple projects at once. So you could do a few, and then you could do the same thing, right? So I just wanted to a quick deviation, but I wanted to come back and show you guys that just because I thought I'd missed that when I first did that one. Looking at the diagramming capability, right? So LeanIX has spent a lot of time and R&D in the last sort of 6 months uplifting the diagramming function of LeanIX. And this isn't my sort of area of expertise, drawing Archimate models and things like that, but I've got enough to be able to show you how it all works. At the moment, we can pop things on a page and create relationships and start to sort of navigate our way through this, as you've probably all seen before, right? And what we can do right now is we can link this to a fact sheet. So we can link it to an application, for example, which is the application in the inventory in the back end. In the next sort of 3 or 4 weeks, you'll be able to create new objects on the fly. So you'll be able to say, right click, create new fact sheet, and you'll be able to model out your fact sheets. So you'll be able to model out your solution and create new objects, new business processes, new capabilities on the go, and they will then be created in the inventory in the back end. Let's say this was a really well-defined, great diagram, and it wasn't looking like this. Then we could actually we can actually save this by just dragging that onto our Scratchpad, and we can then use that again. So this is actually built on diagrams.net. You guys might probably familiar with some of you might be familiar with that. So that's the underlying technology for this particular part of the tool set. There's more shapes here as well. So we've got a whole bunch of other things that we can start to turn on and use as well. Lastly, from me, before I might shoot over to some questions, is the dashboards, right? So this is a really good example of dashboarding. This dashboard in particular is designed to demonstrate an S4HANA transformation. So, for example, we've got our business capability maturity landscape, where at the moment we've got our Gartner pace layering overlaid on this. So now we can start to see important capabilities. So we want to know that route management, it's an innovation capability, right? At the moment, we're at a level 1 ad hoc level of maturity. We want to be optimized because we know that route management is going to give us a differentiation in the market for our competitors. Same as the differentiation capabilities as well. We want to optimize those as much as we possibly can. Commodity, it's fairly similar across the board. So we just want to be at a level a defined level that we're happy with. I wanted to look at this one as well. We might set up a dashboard to be able to look at 2 different scenarios. So understanding, okay, if we go with scenario 1, which is a new implementation, this is going to be the change to our portfolio based on that decision, or scenario 2, which is a system conversion. This will be the change based on that decision as well, and we can start to look at some cost benefit analysis and things like that as well. So that's a pretty quick overview. And I think I've left for sort of 10 minutes or so if anyone wanted to ask some questions or open up the floor to anyone who was interested in having a chat. I can see that there has been some questions coming through. Under the resources tab, we link the process developed in other BP mentors. So I'm just reading some stuff in the chat there. Was there anything, Alec, that you think is relevant in demonstrating?
No, I wasn't too sure if that was a question or Anita just calling out that that's an additional feature. So the LeanIX has got the capability to link out to other things. It may be contract documentation. So I don't know if you want to show that quickly, the resources tab on the fact
Yeah,
sheet,
perfect.
just to enrich your data set. Thank you,
Yeah.
Anita.
Thanks, Anita. So I think I skimmed over that pretty quickly, actually. But essentially, what we've got here is it's the resources tab. So LeanIX really should be your central repository. It should be your single source of truth. It's a bit of a buzzer, but it should be your Google Maps for IT, right? You come to LeanIX, you search for the fact sheet or the item that you want, and then you would come to the resources tab, and you would link to things like the contract or the SLAs that you have for that particular system. You would have all those links there, so then you could be able to come into one central place and then be able to be directed to other parts of the organization. You might also link a Visio diagram or something like that there that explains that system in a little bit more depth.
Oliver, I think you could just say, Anthony Miller, in the landscape reports, can you sort by attribute? Example, in the cost report, can you sort by cost? Yes, you can do the sort up and sort down costing.
So let's have a look
But
at that now. So we've got the total cost. Alec, you might have to direct me here. So
yeah,
what
and
are we
then
trying to?
just next to the levels, you've got the sort option. Yeah, so it is a very rudimentary sorting there, Anthony. But obviously, then you can start applying additional filters, either just clicking on the plus sign at the top. So it's pretty rich in terms of how you can slice it down to a very neat set of data.
What I wanted
And
to show is, well,
yeah,
sorry,
you
Alec.
go, Oliver.
I was going to say what I wanted to show as well is on the actual fact sheet, you can use self-configuration. So you can actually add extra attributes on the fact sheet. So for example, we've got this particular business support, or so I might go to a project fact sheet to show this. This will be better. So we've got a project fact sheet at the moment. And at the bottom here, we've got the OPEX budget and we've got some budget costs there. We could add another attribute right here to say, for example, is this project budgeted for? Has the budget been approved? Yes or no? And then we could filter our reports based on only projects that have been actually accounted for example. So if
Yeah,
there
so if
wasn't
you
any,
maybe want to just show the self-configuration view for people, but not
yeah,
go into the detail, I think that
yeah.
would be
I'm gonna show the self config, and then there's a couple of events that I wanted to call out quickly before we wrap up. So essentially, we've got our self configuration panel here. We can jump in and we can very easily start to add and create and modify the tags the attributes that are already on that particular fact sheet. And of course, look, the meta model is extensible. So if we were to this is the out of the box meta model. If there was a particular use case that required an extra fact sheet type, then that's definitely something that we can look at, and it's something that your customer success manager, Frank, who's based out of New Zealand, who services our Australian customers and New Zealand customers and anyone else in this part of the world, he can do that very easily for you with just a conversation.